Good morning. This is Troy Torres for a recorded Zoom interview with three friends of mine. And before I introduce them, I need to disclose that I am a registered Democrat. So I want to put my bias out there. But throughout this interview, my job is just to moderate a discussion. And we'll start with Republican candidate for senator in Guam, and also a businesswoman. And she has a very interesting story as an immigrant. And I hope that over the next 50 some days, I get to interview her about that. Bistra Mendiola. Good morning, Bistra.
Good morning, Troy. What a weather we're having outside, but thank you for inviting me to this discussion. I'm very happy to be here.
Thank you so much. Democratic Party of Guam Chairman, Tony Babauta. Good morning, Tony.
Hey, good morning, Troy. Thanks for having us. Good morning, Bistra, and good morning to my prima from the Democratic Party and the CNMI, Nola Hix.
So you will recognize her if you are anywhere in the country. You will recognize her as the woman with the energy at the DNC, the executive director of the Democratic Party, the CNMI, Nola Hix, Petersburg. Nola Hix, Petersburg.
Just Hicks, just Hicks. I didn't take his last name.
Okay,
so we're good.
Okay.
And good morning, everyone.
Thank you so much. Let's just hop right into it. National news reports this morning going into the presidential debate, which will begin in 2 hours, are talking about expectations. And so the consensus about expectations of Vice President Harris is that she needs to tell her story and make herself identifiable with the American people. And the expectations are much less for President Trump, who goes into this with the consensus that he just needs to focus on policy issues and not get so personable, basically not lose tact. And if he's able to do that, then he ends up winning the debate. Let's start with your thoughts, Bistra, on expectations.
Absolutely. Yes, I would love to see the same thing because as a regular voter, I also want to see and hear from any politician, regardless who they are, what the solutions to our problems are and not what the problem is, because we all know as adults what the problems are. When we are presented with good solutions, then we make an informed decision. And we want to stay away from the dirty tactics and the smearing. We're tired of this. I don't know any person out there that loves to see the division and drama. It's just inhumane to me.
Do you think your candidate is going to, throughout this debate, hold his composure? We're hearing that from sources, the national media sources, that Vice President Harris, one of the tactics she's going to use tonight is to try to get under President Trump's skin. Do you think your candidate, President Trump, is going to be able to withstand those folks and you just talk about the future like you're saying?
Yes and no, because we all know President Trump from the past performances that we've seen that he's very much capable to do both. It really depends on how he's treated, whether there is a bias in the debate process, moderation, etc. However, as a person who I wish I can cast a vote, right? But if I am watching anywhere from the States, I would like to see composure and tact and more discussion on policy. So in essence, we can expect anything and anything else to happen. So cross our fingers.
Tony, your thoughts on expectations about both candidates?
I think they probably have it right nationally. I mean, this is an opportunity for the vice president to really introduce herself, be able to tell her story, and more importantly, I think be able to talk about her vision for the country and things that she will continue to fight for, some of which were, part of her successes with the vice president as part of the Biden-Harris campaign. So the hallmark pieces of legislation that got passed to bring us out of COVID, the infrastructure bill, the CHIPS Act, those sorts of things that are helping to rebuild the American economy, rebuild the middle class in the country. I think those are the things, as well as her own vision and other ideas to move the country forward and to bring down costs of healthcare and grow small businesses and invest in entrepreneurs. And she's always talked about growing the middle class and cutting taxes for middle class families. And so I think those are the salient points, that she's going to want to communicate to the American public. And insofar as Trump, I don't think Bistra's far off. I mean, it seems like whatever we're going to expect from Trump is kind of what we're going to get from Trump. And there's just been this chorus over the past 3 or 4 weeks about his advisors and others that are supporting him, that they want to hear him talk about policy, and he has just refused to talk about policy. He would rather talk about personal attacks and kind of be a showmanship, be a showman for during his interviews. He's just kind of been all over the place, and I don't know that we should expect any less from him during the presidential debate.
Nola, how about you?
Sorry, I was on mute there. I just to reiterate a little bit of what Tony's talking about. I'm fired up. I'm fired up to see the debate today. I think with regards to Vice President Kamala Harris, a lot of people are saying that she really needs to reintroduce herself. But let's not forget that she was a sitting senator. I mean, she was in the Senate. All of her, her advocacy for climate justice reform. Criminal justice reform. Climate action, her support with infrastructure. A lot of this stuff really does speak to me or resonates with me simply because of my experience with, the Republican corruption in the CNMI. And so, when we're talking about policies, I think what's most important and what people need to really think about when they're going to the elections in November is, is this the type of person or something that we want to normalize? We're talking about somebody that is a convicted felon. Is this something that's normal for us to be able to, the fact that he's still on the ballot is a question mark for me. But aside from policy, it's just, our moral responsibility as voters. So that's just how I feel about the debate. I'm fired up to see prosecutor in action, to see them go head to head on policy and things that matter. And so my expectations are that hopefully, Trump has listened to his advisors, and he dims down on the personal attacks because people are very serious. They want to be able to walk into this, into November, knowing that they're voting for credible candidates. So I guess we'll have to wait and see.
Nola, would you I'm trying to think of the proper term, but would you surrender to a fact that, it's not just the Trump side of the campaign that has lobbed these personal attacks. It's also been Vice President Harris and her campaign who've lobbed some personal attacks against President Trump.
Oh, for sure. I definitely think that both parties have, their strengths and their weaknesses. And this is where, it comes down to being professional. We want to make sure that the second debate is a lot more professional than the first debate. But yeah, I think a lot of Americans, a lot of voters definitely want to hear what the goals are and how to move past the divisiveness of politics and how it's just been so polarizing for the past 8 years. So hopefully we get to move past that and may the best candidate win.
Nola, or for the three of you, I'm going to focus on 3 issues that I believe will directly affect the peoples of Guam and the CNMI, those issues being immigration, taxes and tariffs, and healthcare, health costs, medical costs. And for immigration, I'm going to start with you, Nola, because of the CNMI is where this is at the root of this issue. And it is concerning the estimated thousands of Chinese and Filipino undocumented people living in the CNMI. They are mostly overstays from their contract work era. They did not return back to their home countries because, frankly, even through illegal work, so to speak, they make more money in Saipan, Sinin, and Rota that they're able to remit back to their families in their home countries, right? So we have that situation there, and we have a lack of skilled workforce here in Guam. What do you want to hear in this debate about immigration that might tie, some sort of usefulness, some sort of benefit of an immigration policy to the nexus between the number of undocumented people, the staggering number of undocumented people in the CNMI versus Guam's need for skilled labor?
You know what? Thank you so much for bringing that up, Troy, because, going back to the border crisis, a lot of people are, they're kind of pointing the fingers at the past administration, this administration, but really the border crisis has been an issue for several decades now. And I think it definitely, whatever's in place now is obviously not working. I think during the last presidential, race, there were a lot of plans and policies put into place to fix the border crisis. But tying that back to the CNMI, I'm definitely looking for solutions on how to deal with the undocumented immigrants or contract workers in the CNMI, because these are people that have and I will say, for one, I was one that stood on the side of the road to advocate for their their long-term status. And I've had conversations with our U.S. delegate, Kilili, on what's best. And, my whole thing is these people, they come into the CNMI, they work, they pay taxes just like everybody else. I think for those that definitely have called the CNMI home and have children or have had children in the CNMI, they definitely deserve a different status. And so, I'm hoping that this will be a part of the conversation. It's not going to be easy. It's obviously been a challenge over the years, and this whole touchback. I'm still trying to familiarize myself with the touchback policy. But yeah, I know a lot of these workers, and I feel that their status matters. I think we definitely need to go back to the drawing board to see how we can give back to them with regard, and I think the conversation that I had with Kilili before was that they weren't necessarily asking for a U.S. status. They weren't asking to be U.S. citizens. What they were asking for was some type of residency status for them to be able to live and work in the CNMI just like everybody else. And so I don't see why we can't make that happen. I don't understand the challenges. I don't understand why we can't make that happen. So we definitely need to work on that.
Let me go to the other side of the coin here. And that is, there are a number of military, State Department, and other federal government reports, even media reports over the Biden administration, and perhaps a little bit during the Trump administration as well, about national security and how the situation being the problems of corruption, festering corruption in the CNMI, have led to this hole in national security where you have the Chinese infiltrating, and understanding that these are not the same as the undocumented Chinese laborers in the CNMI, but still you have all of these reports saying and suggesting that the Chinese infiltration of the CNMI is a big problem for the country. And we've been looking at what the federal court system and the federal government has been doing over the Biden administration ever since the pandemic, right? What are the activities of the feds in the CNMI and in Guam in dealing with this Chinese infiltration? And Nola, are you willing to admit we're not seeing much? And what do you want to hear from President Harris versus President Trump about this, basically an immigration policy that might be failing our national security in the CNMI and Guam through the Biden administration?
Well, I guess the way I look at it is, corruption's everywhere. I think there's definitely been a massive amount of corruption in the past 8 years in the CNMI, specifically with the Chinese. But I can't blame the federal government. I will totally blame the Ralph Torres administration, and just that whole 4 years of just the squandering, the misuse and abuse of funding, and just, their relationships and their ties with these Chinese investors has really, put a damper, has really hindered our efforts to be able to move forward. And I think it definitely did pose a black eye on the CNMI. But again, it's just, I would say it would be our inability to self-govern. That's been the biggest issue. I definitely want to hear more from the from the Harris-Walz administration on what their plans are to secure our borders, because as you can see, a lot of that overflow is now coming to Guam. Just the U.S. Coast Guard and the amount of Chinese nationals that we've seen coming into Guam. Again, I think it's something that has been long overdue. This is not something that's new. I mean, there's been a lot of Chinese nationals coming and giving birth in the CNMI, stuff that we've talked about for a while now. But yeah, I definitely want to hear more on what the plans are. So
thank you, Nola. Let me turn this over to Bistra, who is in the most unique situation among all of us here in this conversation, because she is an immigrant who went through the process from Bulgaria, right, Bistra?
Yes.
Bulgaria.
Yes,
okay.
that's
right. So you always have this unique, you're always in this unique position to discuss immigration. And I just wanted to point that out. And we'll discuss your story in another interview because it's a very interesting story. But let's talk first about this, call it a need for Guam to get many of those undocumented skilled laborers over who are staying in Saipan, Tinian, and Rota over here to work here. Is this something you'd like to see, some sort of tangent from the Trump immigration policy that would address something like that, or are you just opposed to that altogether?
Okay, coming from the perspective first of immigrant perspective, one thing must be clear: we have laws and regulations for a very good reason. Because the government needs to ensure that each and every person that comes either for tourist purpose or work or any other business purpose, they're vetted and they're not posing a security threat to the nation. We know that we've been battling since 2001 terrorism, and it was the big idea that we need to fight terrorism. Well, how do we know who is a terrorist or not? There are many ways to vet a person. I am all for immigration done the right way, so that we don't end up with people who are bad actors, who are threatening even the livelihoods of the regular workers. The issue of immigration, I remember President Clinton talking about ending immigration. So it's been a challenge for many of our past administrations. What is happening today is almost a concerted effort to let in everyone freely come in. It kind of mirrors the policy that Angela Merkel enacted a couple of years ago. Actually, it was right around 2014. And today we're seeing the rise of the right-wing parties in Europe, because the people are fed up with illegal immigrants who are not integrating. They're not integrating. I've seen it. And they're basically taking over communities, small villages, small towns. They're even starting to win elections in England. And these are people who are there to take over the land. And I'm not talking as someone that's not familiar with the issue. I'm from there, and I read and watch news in many different languages. So I have a very good understanding of exactly the problem. I do not wish the same thing to happen in the United States, continental US, either in Saipan, either here. There is a way to vet people, and we can strengthen and tighten security, because let's not forget that we live on an island that has very expensive military installations. The federal government has done over the years a great investment to strengthen the security, and we are constantly at risk of anything anything to happen because the tensions in the region are rising up. So to say that we can just invite everyone come over without giving a thought that there were more important issues at stake, that's just sheer wishful thinking. There are ways.
What about the fact that these undocumented people in Saigon, Tinian, and Rota who are former contract workers already were vetted? So they actually were vetted by Homeland Security. Does that make you feel a little bit better about the idea of extending them work permits to come to Guam?
Right. In the case of these workers, I do believe that they can be a compromise as long as the people are, paying their taxes. They're not causing trouble. They go to work, and what they want to do is feed themselves and their families, and they have not committed any crimes. Why not? Of course, we have to take the human point of view here and say, okay, if you're a great guy or a girl, if you've worked your butt off for the last couple of years, we're going to give you a chance. Everybody else that's landing on our shores, and it's not only on Guam, it's also in the continental US, that's breaking the law. I don't have any sympathy for these people, because if I can do it the right way, so can they.
That's what I meant by you have the most unique perspective here. And it's kind of hard to argue with you on immigration issues because you are an immigrant who went through the process. But okay, I want to come back to you on the issue of whether you agree or disagree with Nola about whether the federal government has been doing enough under the Biden administration to counterpoint Chinese aggression in this region through the immigration policy. But first, I want to get to Tony Babauta on his thoughts on this issue of whether we can get some of these people, a lot of these people who are parked in the CNMI over to Guam to be labor workers here or nurses here even. Tony, your thoughts on the matter and what you want to hear from in this presidential debate about immigration that might give you a hint about how this might help Guam in the CNMI.
Yeah, it's our situation out here is extremely unique. With the Northern Marianas and what their immigration system was before federal immigration laws were extended to them, and what that did for the guest worker population that was there, which at the height of CNMI's economy in the 1990s numbered, I think, 30 to 40,000 guest workers were in the CNMI, and I know that number has now decreased since then, as just a reflection of the economy and the hardship that CNMI has gone through to try and reinvent itself to produce a better economy for its people. There shouldn't be too much of a problem with trying to get some legislation passed through Congress that allows that shared worker between the CNMI and Guam. We're so close in jurisdictions, and federal immigration law rules the day in the Marianas now, right? It's not two separate systems. What I would have liked to see, and I come from a unique perspective in this regard, Troy, because I was on the Hill when we passed that legislation that extended federal immigration law. What I haven't seen since we passed that law is greater investment by the federal government in taking its responsibility for the immigration in the CNMI. I know that there still seems to be a lot of blame put on the local government officials and local government entities for continuing immigration problems. But that immigration system now is a federal immigration system. And what you need is greater investment in terms of people and resources and agents and so on and so forth. I had a conversation with military leaders when I was in the federal government about the infiltration of Chinese citizens into Guam and what that posed in terms of any breaches on the bases, right? Because that was a security issue. And the response that we received at the time was the commanders will protect their bases as they as they should, right? They have no problems with protecting their bases. They know who's going to come through the fence and who they have to keep out of the fence. The greater security risk for our military establishment and DoD and all federal agencies for that matter is, someone sitting in a coffee shop somewhere in Beijing or in some other country and hacking into DoD system, right? I mean, cybersecurity is really where the main is where a lot of the security risk is. The physical security risk. I don't know if there's that much of a physical security risk when you have military commanders that are responsible for protecting their bases. Having said that,
well, Tony, there have been a whole bunch of news reports and stuff coming out of the State Department and the DoD about the continuing risks of Chinese spies in Guam and in the CNMI.
yes, I was going to say. Having said that, I do know that there are those reports out there where folks have flown drones close to military bases, and then there's just that human element of trying to infiltrate. But I mean, I think that'll always be there. But I think the more important thing in terms of securing the immigration system out here is probably more federal resources. I don't think there's a time during the year that goes by where we don't think we need more federal resources, especially when it comes to immigration at our ports of entry. More agents, more people, that sort of thing.
Okay. Thank you for that concession on that point. At least I need to move this conversation along because we have like 7 minutes left. We need to upgrade our Zoom thing. Our renewal thing came up and we forgot about it. Anyway, so I need to zoom by the next two subjects and ask that you guys give me brief answers on two very important subjects that very likely will come up in the debate in about an hour and a half. First is their plans on taxes and tariffs. And we'll start with you, Tony. So they've talked about, economists generally agree that President Trump's plans to raise tariffs in a big way in places like China, et cetera, right, will cost the average American $3,900 annually. So we can probably bet it'll cost the average Guamanian, average Commonwealth Islander much more than that because of all the reasons that costs are so much more expensive. So there is, how do you defend? And by the way, President or Vice President Harris would also like to raise tariffs in certain instances, but just not as much as President Trump will. And on the reverse side of that, their tax plan, both candidates want to lower taxes for the middle class, but Vice President Harris wants big tax increases on unrealized gains and on corporate and individual income taxes past a certain threshold. President Trump just wants to cut taxes all around. How do you explain whether your candidate's policies are going to be good for the people of Guam and the CNMI? We'll start with you, Tony.
Well, I think first and foremost, I think when it comes to what you had mentioned, which is the raising taxes on capital gains, that only applies to individuals that make $100 million or more. So, as is always the case, Democratic leaders want those who make more to pay their fair share, and that's where the target of trying to get those who make more to pay their fair share comes into play. Former President Trump, wants to lower taxes for those who make more and kind of go with that trickle down economic effect of where it will create jobs, which it always hasn't proven to be the case. For Vice President Harris, she wants working families to get a break and wants to cut taxes for the middle class as well as make more opportunities for the middle class to grow, which includes supporting labor, supporting higher wages, those sorts of things, lowering the cost of homes, putting more homes on the market, those sorts of policies that will help strengthen and grow the middle class.
Bistra, your thoughts about your guy and about the vice president's proposals as well on tariffs and taxes.
All right, so tariffs are always an added cost to anything that you import. They're good for the country that is producing things that normally would not be sold. It's a very tricky question because we all know that we want to help the local economy. At the same time, we want to import cheaper products and goods. And the government nowadays, they need to pay their COVID bill. You know, everything that was borrowed needs to be paid back. And I think this is the very reason why we're talking about numerous increases in taxation. President Trump's tax cut was a very good learning curve for our local government. If you remember, the local government was panicking how they are going to pay the bills. Instead of shrinking the belt, we're growing every year. Unfortunately, we're growing this government to unprecedented levels. So if there's any cut, either from Harris or Trump, we're going to be in trouble here locally. So that's concerning the government. When it comes to the small businesses, small and medium-sized businesses, tax cuts are a great tool to reinvest the cash that's remaining at the end of the year. I've seen it work in my own business as well. During the first year when I opened, I was still working with the older tax table. And then in 2018, I saw the benefit of the corporate tax going down to 21%. And mind you, I'm just a mom and pop type of business, and it helped tremendously because everything that we saved at the end of the year went towards purchasing more inventory and growing the business. If that tax cut wasn't done, I would have paid out the money and I would have been left with far less and it would have been able to grow. So anyone that tells me the tax cuts do not work, probably needs to speak to more small businesses or go to the taxfoundation.com and see more articles on the issue. Tax cuts are great. The people have more spending power. Well, look what happened in our local economy when we had the ARP funds. People went on spending sprees. And our local retail industry boomed. The restaurant business boomed. People were scrambling to hire more people because they needed the extra help. So that trickle effect, we've seen it already when we have more extra cash to spend. First of all, let's lower down the BPT tax to 1% because in my opinion, the people that pay currently the BPT tax, that's your pay less, that's your cost you less, that's your GTA, that's the folks that you frequent on daily basis. That's not the mom and pop that's exempt. It does matter. Tax cuts are great to grow an economy, and I hope that either or candidate, it doesn't matter. I hope that they lower the taxation because we need it. Right now, specifically on Guam, we have almost zero tourism. I don't know when the tourism is going to come back to pre-pandemic level. We need more businesses to flourish outside of the tourism, possibly partnering with the military personnel that is currently kind of sustaining the hotel